Listen carefully. If you love emotional stories that feel real, stories that make you question family, loyalty, and regret, then this channel is for you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and stay with me till the end, because the story will stay with you long after it's over. I never imagined that grief could feel crowded. I always thought mourning was a quiet thing, something that happened in empty rooms with drawn curtains and unanswered questions hanging in the air. But the day my husband was laid to rest, grief arrived with noise, murmurs, footsteps, expensive shoes clicking against marble floors, and whispers that followed me like shadows. The church was filled with people who knew his name, respected his power, admired his success. They came in black suits and dark dresses, holding sympathy like a formal obligation. And I stood there, dressed in black too, but carrying a lifetime of memories no one else could see. My husband, Richard Halley, had been a wealthy man. Not born into it, not handed success on a silver spoon. He built everything himself, brick by brick, deal by deal, failure by failure. And I loved him not for the money, but for the way he looked at me when he thought no one else was watching, like I was the only safe place he had ever known. When he died suddenly of a heart attack, the world mourned a businessman. I mourned a man who used to warm my hands between his palms when winter nights got too cold. I thought the hardest part would be saying goodbye to him. I was wrong. I was standing near the front pew, my hands folded tightly, my back straight because years of surviving had taught me how to stand tall even when my knees were trembling. People came up to offer condolences. Some I recognized, many I didn't. I nodded, whispered thank you, let their words pass through me like wind through open windows. Then, just as the service was about to begin, I felt something shift in the air. A familiar heaviness pressed against my chest. I looked up, and there he was. My son, Ethan. Years had passed since I last saw him, but a mother never forgets the face she once memorized in the dark. He was taller now, broader. His jaw sharper, his eyes harder. He wore a tailored black suit, the kind that fit too perfectly to be accidental. His hair was neatly styled, and on his wrist was a watch that probably cost more than the rent I used to struggle to pay years ago. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Memories came crashing back without permission. A small boy holding my hand as we walked to school. A teenage boy slamming his bedroom door because life wasn't fair. A young man standing in front of me, eyes full of resentment, telling me he was tired of being poor. The last time we spoke, his words had cut deeper than any blade. "I can't live like this anymore, Mom," he had said, his voice shaking with anger and shame. "I'm tired of hand-me-downs, tired of counting pennies, tired of being nobody," I had tried to explain. Tried to tell him that life wasn't a race, that dignity mattered more than money, that we would be okay. But he wasn't listening. He was already gone, mentally packing his bags, emotionally severing ties. "You chose this life," he told me, "and I won't." Then he left. Walked out with nothing but a backpack and his pride, abandoning me as easily as if I were a mistake he needed to erase. That was 15 years ago, and now he was here. At my rich husband's funeral, our eyes met across the church. For a split second, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe? Or calculation. Then his face settled into something neutral, controlled. He didn't smile. He didn't look away either. He simply walked closer, each step measured, deliberate. "Mom," he said quietly, as if we were strangers meeting by chance. I swallowed hard. "Ethan?" No hug, no apology. No acknowledgement of the years of silence. "I'm sorry for your loss," he added, his tone respectful, almost rehearsed. I nodded slowly. "Thank you. That should have been the end of it. But life doesn't always give you clean endings." He took a seat a few rows behind me, alone. Throughout the service, I could feel his presence like a weight pressing into my back. While the priest spoke about legacy and love, my mind drifted back to the years after Ethan left. Those were hard years, lonely ones. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Cleaned offices at night, served tables during the day. I cried in bathrooms and slept through alarms. I learned how to stretch meals and hide exhaustion behind forced smiles. And then one day, Richard walked into the small diner where I worked. He was polite, quiet. He tipped generously and came back the next day. And the day after that, he listened when I talked. Really listened. He didn't look at me like I was broken or beneath him. He saw me. When he found out about Ethan, about the years of struggle, he never once judged me. "You did your best," he told me. "That's more than most people can say." We married 5 years later. By then, Richard was already successful, wealthy even. But I never told Ethan. Not because I was hiding it, but because he never called, never wrote, never looked back, until now. After the service, people gathered outside, speaking in hushed tones. I stood near Richard's grave, staring at the fresh soil, trying to accept the finality of it all. That's when Ethan approached me again. "Can we talk?" he asked. I hesitated. Every instinct told me to walk away, but he was still my son. We moved a few steps aside. "I didn't know," he said, glancing around. "About him, about all this." "I didn't think it mattered," I replied softly. He nodded slowly, then took a breath. "I heard he was very wealthy." There it was. The ache in my chest sharpened. "Yes," I said. "He was." Ethan's eyes flicked back to me. "Did he leave a will?" I stared at him, disbelief washing over me like cold water. Not even an hour after burying my husband, and this was what he wanted to know. "That's not appropriate," I said, my voice barely steady. "I'm just asking," he replied quickly. "I mean, I'm your son." I looked at him then, really looked. And I realized something painful. The boy I raised was gone. In his place stood a man shaped by ambition, entitlement, and regret he refused to name. "Yes," I said quietly. "He left a will." Ethan's posture straightened. And it doesn't concern you." His jaw tightened. "Mom, come on. You're rich now. You have more than enough." I struggled too, you know. I almost laughed at that, almost cried. "You abandoned me," I said. "Because I was poor." Silence fell between us, heavy and suffocating. "I did what I had to do," he muttered. "And so did I replied. He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "I didn't come here to fight. I just thought maybe we could work something out at my husband's grave." I felt something inside me harden, not into bitterness, but clarity. "There's nothing to work out today," I said. "This is not the time." His eyes darkened, but he nodded. "Fine, but we'll talk again." He walked away without another word. I stood there long after everyone else had gone, the wind tugging gently at my coat, my heart heavy with grief, not just for the man I lost, but for the son who returned only when money entered the picture. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Listen carefully. Before the story continues, take a second to support this channel. Stories like this take heart, time, and truth to tell. If you're enjoying it, subscribe, like, and stay till the end. Because what happens next will change everything. The house felt unbearably quiet after the funeral. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that rings in your ears and reminds you that someone is missing. Richard's shoes were still by the door. His coat still hung on the hook, carrying the faint scent of his cologne. I moved through the room slowly, touching things without realizing it. Like I was afraid they might disappear if I didn't remind myself they were real. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, the will folder resting unopened on the coffee table. The lawyer had given it to me earlier that day, telling me gently that I didn't have to read it right away. But I already knew what was inside. Richard and I talked about it more than once. Not because we were obsessed with money, but because he believed in being prepared. "Love doesn't mean leaving chaos behind," he used to say. "It means making sure the people you care about are protected." Protected. I thought of Ethan. The next morning, the doorbell rang just after 9. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there he was again, standing on my porch like he belonged there. He held a small bouquet of flowers this time, white lily. Too late gestures always annoyed me more than no gestures at all. "I thought you might like these," he said, holding them out. I took them without comment and stepped aside. "You'd better come in." He walked inside slowly, his eyes scanning the house. I recognized that look. He wasn't seeing memories. He was seeing value, the hardwood floors, the high ceilings, the artwork Richard had collected over the years. This house wasn't just a home to Ethan, it was proof. We sat across from each other in the living room. An uncomfortable distance separated us, filled with years of unsaid things. "So," he began, clasping his hands together, "I guess we should talk." "Yes," I agreed. "We should." He cleared his throat. "I want to start by saying, I didn't come back just for money." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "I mean," he continued quickly, "obviously, that's part of it. I won't lie. But I also wanted to see you." "It's been a long time." I studied his face. He looked sincere enough, but sincerity without accountability is just performance. You left, I said calmly. You didn't call. You didn't check if I was alive. You disappeared. He shifted uncomfortably. I was young, angry. I felt trapped. And I wasn't? I asked quietly. I was your mother, Ethan. I was responsible for keeping us alive. I didn't have the luxury of walking away. He looked down. I know that now. Silence stretched between us again. Finally, he spoke. I heard from someone that Richard didn't have children. That's correct. So, he said carefully, everything goes to you. Yes. And since you're my mother. He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. I looked at the unopened will on the table. Ethan, I said, my voice steady, there's something you need to understand about Richard. And about me. I leaned forward and picked up the folder. Richard loved me, and he knew you existed. We talked about you. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. You did? Of course we did. He knew you were my son, and he knew you left. But he also believed in second chances. I opened the folder and took out the top page. I didn't need to read it. I had memorized the words. Richard made a provision for you in his will, Ethan. His face was a mixture of surprise and relief. A greedy glint I knew all too well flickered in his eyes before he could hide it. He did? Yes, I said. He left you a small sum. Enough to get back on your feet. But it came with a condition. He leaned in, his attention fully captured now. What condition? I took a slow breath. The condition is that you spend 1 full month living here with me, no leaving, no disappearing. You help with the house, you share meals with me, and you talk to me, really talk. After 30 days, if you've held up your end, you get the money. Ethan's face fell. He slumped back in his chair, the excitement draining away. A month? Here? That's a lot to ask. Is it? I countered. After 15 years of silence? It seems like a small price to pay. He looked around the room again, his gaze lingering on the expensive paintings. I could see the wheels turning in his head, weighing the inconvenience against the potential reward. He was calculating just like he always did. And if I don't? He asked. If I refuse? I smiled, a sad, knowing smile. Then the money, along with everything else, goes to the charity Richard and I supported for years. It's your choice, Ethan. Stay and reconnect with your mother, or walk away again with nothing. What's it going to be? The silence that followed was different. It wasn't empty. It was filled with the weight of a decision that would define our future, or if we even had one at all. Thanks for watching until the very end. Let me know in the comments what you think Ethan should do. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2. See you next time. He nodded as if confirming something he'd already assumed. Then technically someday, that would all be mine anyway. I felt my chest tighten. This wasn't the reunion I had ever imagined, not even in my worst nightmares. That's not how inheritance works, Ethan. But you're my mother, he insisted, his voice laced with a strange sort of entitlement. I'm your only child. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I leaned back in my chair, an exhaustion so deep it felt bone-weary washing over me. Blood doesn't erase choices, Ethan. His voice sharpened instantly. Are you punishing me? No, I replied, my own voice firm, refusing to waver. I'm respecting reality. He let out a frustrated huff. Mom, look. I'm not asking for everything. I just need help. I've had some setbacks. I couldn't help it. A soft, bitter laugh escaped my lips. It wasn't humor, it was pure disbelief. Setbacks? Yes, he shot back defensively. Life hasn't been easy. I looked at him then, really looked at the man my son had become. Life wasn't easy when I skipped meals so you could eat. Life wasn't easy when I worked 2 jobs until my hands cracked and bled. But I never, ever abandoned you. His face hardened, his jaw tight. You're acting like I committed some unforgivable crime. You broke my heart, I said simply. The truth, stripped bare, was the most powerful weapon I had, and it worked. It shut him up. He pushed himself out of his chair and began to pace the length of the living room, a caged animal. I came here thinking we could rebuild. Start over. No, I corrected, my voice quiet but cutting. You came here because you buried a rich man and saw an opportunity. He stopped dead in his tracks. That's not fair. Neither was leaving, I whispered. He turned back to face me, his hands thrown up in exasperation. So what now? You're just going to shut me out completely? I took a long, slow breath, trying to steady myself. I didn't say that, but trust isn't automatic. It's not a switch you can just flip back on. It has to be earned. How? He asked, the words sounding almost like a demand. By showing up without asking for anything, I replied. By being my son, not my creditor. He scoffed, a bitter, dismissive sound. You don't need me. You have everything. I rose slowly from my chair, feeling the ache in my joints, my voice steady but firm. I don't have my husband. And I lost my son years ago. Money didn't protect me from that. He just stared at me, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes before he turned and left. Days passed, then weeks. Ethan didn't leave town. He started showing up unannounced. Sometimes with a bag of groceries, sometimes with a flimsy excuse about being in the neighborhood. He'd ask about Richard, about my routines, about the business which I pointedly refused to discuss. One afternoon, I came home to find him sitting in the backyard just staring at the garden Richard and I planted together, now in full bloom. He loved this place, Ethan said quietly, without turning around. Yes, I replied, standing a few feet away. He did. I didn't know. He said again, his voice softer this time, almost hesitant. I didn't know you found happiness. That wasn't your concern back then, I said. It wasn't meant to be cruel, just truthful. He swallowed hard. I thought, if you were poor, if you were still struggling, then leaving me made more sense. But seeing you like this, it just makes me feel like I was wrong. I crossed my arms, a familiar wall going up. Being wrong doesn't undo the damage, Ethan. He nodded slowly. I know. For the first time since he'd been back, I saw something real in his eyes. It wasn't entitlement, it was regret. But still, I wasn't ready. My heart was still a fortress. Then came the letter. A formal, cream-colored envelope from the estate lawyer. Someone had contested the will. My blood ran cold. I knew instantly who it was. That evening I confronted Ethan, the letter trembling in my hand. He didn't even try to deny it. I had a right to try, he said, his voice hard. I'm family. You're challenging my husband's final wishes, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of fury and pain. After everything, he clenched his fists at his sides. I'm tired of always being on the outside looking in. You put yourself there, I shot back. The room felt heavy, charged with years of resentment and unspoken grief. You know what hurts the most? I asked, my voice cracking. It's not the lawsuit. It's that even now, after all of this, you still think money is the thing that will fix what you broke. He didn't answer. He had no answer. That night, I cried harder than I had since Richard died. Because I finally realized the devastating truth. My son hadn't come back to heal. He came back to claim. And now I would have to decide whether protecting my peace meant letting him go. All over again. Listen closely. Before the final part begins, take a moment. If this story has made you feel something, if it's reminded you of love, loss, or regret, subscribe to this channel and stay till the very end. Because the last chapter isn't about money at all. It's about truth. The legal process moved slower than grief but heavier than silence. Every letter from the lawyer felt like another small funeral. Another reminder that even after death, conflict can survive. Ethan's challenge to the will wasn't strong, not legally, but it was painful emotionally. Richard had been clear. Everything he built was left to me. No hidden clauses, no forgotten promises. Still, seeing my own son's name typed beneath the words contesting party felt like betrayal written in ink. Ethan stopped coming by after that. No groceries, no awkward conversations, just absence. And strangely, the quiet returned, but this time it felt different, less sharp, more resolved. One afternoon, I found myself in Richard's study, a room I had avoided since his death. The smell of old books and leather wrapped around me like a memory. I sat at his desk and opened a drawer I never touched before. Inside was a sealed envelope with my name written in his handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. My love, it began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And I'm sorry for the pain I know you're carrying. Tears blurred my vision. He wrote about us. About meeting me at the diner. About admiring my strength long before he fell in love with my heart. Then the letter shifted. I know your son may return one day, not because he is cruel, but because he is lost. If that day comes, remember this. You owe him honesty, not sacrifice. Love does not mean rewarding abandonment. It means refusing to teach that people are disposable. I pressed the letter to my chest and sobbed. The court date came sooner than I expected. Ethan sat across the room from me, avoiding my eyes. He looked smaller somehow, less confident. When the judge ruled in my favor, final and unquestionable, Ethan didn't react. He just nodded once as if he had already lost long before the verdict. Outside the courthouse, he finally approached me. "I guess that's it," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied. He hesitated. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "But it did," I said. "Because you pushed it there." He looked at me, eyes glistening. I was angry, I thought. If I had money, I wouldn't feel so empty. I sighed. "I had nothing for years, Ethan, and I still loved you. Money doesn't fill emptiness. It just hides it." We stood there, two strangers bound by blood and broken history. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, not defensively, not strategically, just small. I believed him. But belief doesn't always lead to reconciliation. "I forgive you," I said gently. "But forgiveness doesn't mean access." His face crumpled slightly. "So, this is goodbye?" "For now," I said. "You need to figure out who you are without chasing what other people have." He nodded slowly. "I wish I hadn't left." "So do I," I said. Every day. Months passed. The house grew quieter, but it was a peaceful quiet, a healing quiet. I started a small garden in the backyard, planting roses, Richard's favorite. One morning, as I was watering them, I saw a familiar car parked across the street. Ethan. He didn't get out. He just sat there for a long time, watching. He didn't come to the door, didn't ask for money, didn't demand anything. He just watched. Then he drove away. He came back the next week. And the week after that, always the same. He would park, sit, and leave. It wasn't a return, not yet. But it wasn't an absence either. It was something in between. Maybe it was a start. Maybe he was finally learning that some things, like love and forgiveness, can't be bought or won in court. They have to be earned. Slowly, quietly, from a distance. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt a flicker of hope. Not for what was lost, but for what could one day be rebuilt. Thanks for watching. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next video. Life settled into something quieter. After Richard was gone, the echoing silence in our grand house was too much to bear. So I downsized. I found a smaller, cozier place that felt like mine, filled with light and potential. It was a blank canvas, and I was ready to paint a new life. Richard's wealth, the very thing that had caused so much strife, felt like a heavy anchor. I didn't want it. So I began donating large portions of it to causes he had genuinely cared about: animal shelters, local libraries, art programs for underprivileged kids. With every check I wrote, I felt a piece of the weight lift, transforming his legacy from one of materialistic success to one of genuine community impact. Instead of filling my days with lunch dates and shopping, I started volunteering at a local community center. It was there, amidst the hum of activity and the scent of strong coffee, that I found a new purpose. One evening a week, I led a support group for women who reminded me so much of my younger self. Women who looked tired, their shoulders slumped with the weight of the world. Women whose eyes held a flicker of fear, but also a deep, untapped reservoir of strength. They were navigating difficult relationships, financial struggles, and the daunting task of rediscovering who they were outside of who they were told to be. In their stories, I heard echoes of my own. In helping them find their voices, I strengthened mine. We shared tears, laughter, and the quiet understanding that comes from shared experience. It was humbling and it was healing. Then one day, a letter arrived. The envelope was plain, with no return address, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was Ethan's. My hand trembled as I opened it, bracing myself for another plea, another demand. But the words inside were not what I expected. He wrote about starting over, about getting a regular job in a city I didn't know. He mentioned therapy, how he was finally talking to someone, really talking for the first time in his life. He wrote about understanding, truly understanding. The cost of love when it's given so freely, without expectation or condition. He wrote about how he'd taken my love for granted, treating it like an endless resource he was entitled to. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask to come back into my life. The letter was just a thank you. He thanked me for everything, but most of all, he thanked me for not giving in. "I think you saved me by saying no," he wrote. "You forced me to save myself." The tears I've been holding back for so long finally came, but they weren't tears of sadness or regret. They were tears of release. A chapter had finally truly closed. I was free, and in a way, so was he. The burden of his choices was no longer mine to carry. A year passed. My life found a gentle, peaceful rhythm. The quiet Sundays I once dreaded became my favorite. They were for me, for reading in the garden, for long walks, for simply being. On one such Sunday morning, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, Ethan stood there. He looked different. Thinner, perhaps, but his eyes were clearer. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeting at his sides, holding nothing but himself. There was no pretense, no agenda I could sense. "I just wanted to see you," he said, his voice quiet, hesitant. No agenda. I looked at him, the son I had loved so fiercely, the man who had broken my heart. I saw the remorse, but I also saw the effort. I saw the boy I raised, finally becoming a man on his own terms. I stepped aside, opening the door wider. "Then come in." We sat at my small kitchen table, the same way we used to when he was a boy, sharing a pot of coffee. The silence between us wasn't heavy or awkward anymore. It was comfortable, filled with things that didn't need to be said. It wasn't perfect. The scars were still there, faint lines on the surface of our history. Our relationship wasn't magically healed. But it was honest. And after everything, that was more than enough. Because I finally understood that sometimes love isn't about giving someone everything you have until you have nothing left. Sometimes the greatest act of love is teaching them the true value of what they lost, so they can finally learn to earn it for themselves. Thank you for listening.